Welcome to Elevenses with Lisa. I'm Lisa Louise Cooke. Grab your favorite cuppa in your Elevenses mug and let's talk about genealogy. You know, one of the great things about genealogy is that there's always new records. Well, they're not really new records. It's new old records. And these records have sometimes been around for hundreds of years. They may have been languishing in the basement of an archive, a library, or even a private collection. And every day, old records are becoming newly available, and often available to us right from the comfort of our own home. Who doesn't love that? And when we can get our hands on those records, it just can throw open the doors to new possibilities. Our genealogy brick walls, I think, are just shaken in their boots because it just takes one record, the right record, to knock that brick wall down. So today we're going to explore two major genealogy record collections, and they are very unique, and they have two really very important things in common. They're both online, and they are both absolutely free. Now, if your family has any connection with the state of Ohio, and sometimes I think it's hard not to find a family with at least one ancestor who made their way through the state, then our first collection is going to be of great interest to you. It's called Ohio Memory. It's their collection and their website at ohiomemory.org. But even if you don't have a direct connection with the state, like all collections, it's really worth taking a peek because records don't care about borders, right? So there might be something there that you are looking for and you need. And like I said, it's absolutely free, so there's no reason not to go and check. Now, ohiomemory.org was featured in the Family Tree magazine Best 75 State Genealogy Websites in one of their recent magazine issues. And as you may know, I host the Family Tree Magazine podcast. I've been doing that for over a decade now. And so recently, I had an opportunity to interview the Digital Services Manager for Ohio Memory. Her name is Jenny Solomon. And that was for the audio podcast. But there is so much to see at Ohio Memory that I thought, it just makes sense to show you the video interview here on the show today. So let's dig in to Ohio Memory. Hi, Jenny.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, because so many of our ancestors, I think at some point, passed through Ohio. And of course, that makes the Ohio Memory website just a really important resource for many, many people. So tell us, first and foremost, who is Ohio Memory?
Ohio Memory is the collaborative digital library program of the Ohio History Connection and the State Library of Ohio. It was actually established in 2000, so we're celebrating 20 years this year. So it's nice to get an award in a year that was already exciting and significant for us. Initially, it was established as a bicentennial project. They wanted a way to capture some of Ohio's history. The Ohio we know today turned 200 in 2003. So they wanted to spend some time seeing how we could capture Ohio's history and share it more broadly. So that's how it started. We basically, not me specifically, but we worked with institutions around the state to, they picked some of their favorite items in their collections. We helped them digitize them and we put them online. They're still there today. In the Ohio Memory collection on Ohio Memory, which is a little bit confusing, but that's how it started. It was just a online scrapbook was the vision. And then it was, we got some grant funding through a couple of different state organizations to support that. And it was so successful that we continued to do work on the project after that initial round of funding with a little bit more funding from some other folks. And then we were able to expand it even further.
Oh, right.
Initial submission, we had about 260 institutions contribute over 13,000 different items.
Wow. Now, you mentioned the institutions that are involved. Am I correct that this is primarily library driven?
Yes, it's mostly libraries, but we certainly have contributions from all different types of organizations. So we have a lot of historical societies who participate. Public libraries are probably our biggest participant, but we have university libraries. We have government institutions, special libraries, religious archives. Particularly if you're looking at the early phases of the program, of the project, we have great diversity in the organization types that were represented. So we also have, I think, images from Columbus Zoo, from botanical gardens, lots of different things represented there.
Everything Ohio.
Yeah.
So for the genealogist who will be coming to ohiomemory.org, they'll be excited to know what do you have and kind of how is it organized on the website? What should they be looking for?
So in terms of types of materials, we have coverage of early, prehistory through present day. So we have a lot of early statehood. We have representation of our American Indian predecessors. We have Civil War coverage, World War I, pretty much any big event you can think of in Ohio, any aspect of Ohio history, we have some sort of coverage on. We have all 88 counties are represented. There are photographs, we have maps, we have drawings, paintings, manuscripts, and journals. We have archaeological artifacts, natural history specimens, historical objects. We have oral histories, so both audio and video there. And we have lots of newspapers and we have lots of yearbooks. And then through primarily the state library's contribution, we have a lot of present day government records as well, because they are capturing some of the websites and currently produced materials as well as historical. So it's kind of more of what don't we have, and certainly there are things that we're missing, and every year we're working to add more. Our partners we are to add more to make sure that the story is as inclusive as it can be given the resources that we have available.
And are these digital, items, or are we going to run into lots of, in a sense, what are catalog listings, but not necessarily available to view on the website? What's the nature of the items?
Everything should be the full digital version of that item. So if we're looking at the newspaper, it's the full newspaper issue, keyword searchable. Same thing with other printed materials. We do sometimes connect back to other catalog records, but if you're going to Ohio Memory, you're going to see the thing that you're looking for as close of a representation as we can get to the real thing using digital technology.
Fantastic. And you said they're searchable. And of course, when you go to the home page, first and foremost, you do see the search box. So do you have any kind of tips and recommendations for us to get the most out of using that?
Yes. So a big tip for Ohio Memory is that when you're doing a search, it's not only searching your keyword full text search, optical character recognition, OCR data, but also the metadata that every partner, including the Ohio History Connection, has added to the items to describe them so people can find them. Obviously, if you're looking at a photograph, there aren't going to be words you can search on, so we have to rely on our own descriptions of them to find those materials. So it's important to pick a keyword that's relevant to your search, and also a keyword that is accurate to the time period you're searching as well, because depending on what the nature of the material is, you might have to look at things a little bit differently, particularly in newspapers. Words change over time, location names change over time. So that's something that we're trying to capture, or we are capturing history as it happened, but also trying to make sure that it's connected to the history of today so people can figure out those changes. When you're on the homepage, probably the biggest tip, if you're mostly looking for visual items, which I think is where a lot of people like to start, because photographs are just so much, they're very exciting to see all the things that have been captured over the years. On the main page, there's a little box that you can click that says exclude full text sources. So when you do your search, and you do a search for dog or whatever, you'll just get pictures and photographs back and manuscript materials, and not necessarily get bogged down with thousands of pages of newspaper results, which I personally love because I help with our newspaper digitization program the most, but I know other people can get a little overwhelmed by it. So that's one good tip to keep in mind is restricting your format to what you want to do right from the homepage.
Oh, that's a great suggestion. You mentioned the newspapers, and of course, we think of Chronicling America at the Library of Congress as a place to go to newspapers.
Mm-hmm.
Will we find the same collections, or will we find some unique items at Ohio Memory?
Ohio Memory and Chronicling America collections do not overlap. So we have contributed quite a bit of content to Chronicling America over the years, and we've focused our Ohio Memory contributions on different titles and different time periods. So you'll find a lot deeper runs of papers on Ohio Memory. You'll find more recent papers. So we have some of our partners on the project have digitized their local newspapers up through 2019 and continue to add more content every year. And then we also have some really early significant newspapers for Ohio, like the Ohio State Journal, which was the paper of record for Ohio during the 19th century. So that we had that coverage from like 1830 through 1875. So a really important time period of Ohio's growth and the Civil War. And then we also worked with another library to digitize one of the earlier papers in Ohio, the Lebanon Western Star, which is in Southwest Ohio near Cincinnati and Kings Island, if anyone knows where that is. Great amusement park outside there. But that also covers some really great early Ohio history from a more rural area in our state. So there is not any overlap, but they're all kind of part of the same story, building the same collection. And so I think at last count, we have hit about 1 million pages between those two websites of digitized newspaper content.
Well, that's exciting that there isn't the overlap and that there's that kind of a volume. And you mentioned another exciting collection, I think, that interests people a lot, which is yearbooks. Tell us a little bit about that.
So a lot of our partners, particularly those public libraries that we work with, have access to yearbook collections through, their partnerships with local schools. And that's just one of the things that public libraries seem to gravitate toward. And so a lot of them have worked to digitize their materials and put them on Ohio Memory. Some of them go back pretty early. Some of them are more recent. Generally, you're not going to get anything past kind of the mid 20aughts just because of privacy issues for minors. But there's definitely a lot of good content from our Northwest Ohio partners and some Northeast Ohio partners with yearbooks, and then some kind of student history from Southwest Ohio as well with a couple universities we have participating in the program down there. So I think there's yearbooks and sort of like images of students that aren't necessarily yearbooks, but just student pictures, that kind of thing.
Oh, fantastic. Now, the big question, is it all free? Or are there some things that are pay subscription?
The whole thing is free. Everything on Ohio Memory is free. We used to have one collection that was behind a paywall, but a couple years ago we opened that up. That was the Underground Railroad Wilbur H. Siebert collection, which has a lot of great information about Underground Railroad activities in Ohio and beyond. And it's a really strong resource for people looking at research methods of the era where this was made, and also kind of trying to dive into some of these stories of how the Underground Railroad actually operated. And some of these stories were like kind of first and second hand, but it's still very helpful to know. But we opened that up a couple of years ago in celebration of Black History Month, and just kept it open because we really want people to have access to those resources. So everything on Ohio Memory is free.
Well, that's what we like to hear.
Yeah.
Wow, what an amazing resource. Anything I didn't ask you about that you feel like our genealogy listening audience would be excited to hear about?
Gosh, I mean, there's just so much in Ohio Memory that I really just encourage people to just check it out and see what they can find. You may not find things specific to your family history, but sometimes we look at it as kind of coloring in those black and white photos with just getting more context around the community that your families were in and the world they were living in. So even if it's not a story about like your uncle who did something cool at this time, it could be you're like getting a greater understanding of what life was like back then. And recently we've put together some help resources on our website. We have a few videos and some just like an FAQ and some like kind of search guides to help people really learn how to dive in, because it is Google-like, but sometimes if you're really trying to do more complicated searches or trying to find something very specific, it's nice to have those tips on hand. So we're trying to make sure that information is available for our users so that they can do that as much as they can on their own, but also we're available via email to help too.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, it's a tremendous resource. We're very fortunate that you guys have it. What have you got coming in the future? Is there an ongoing digitization process or other things in the works?
Yeah, so the way the program works now is the Ohio History Connection and the State Library of Ohio continually digitize and add materials to Ohio Memories. So every year, Ohio History Connection staff look at our collecting initiatives and our strategic goals and try to figure out what collections we have in our archives that we could digitize and expose to the public. So this year we focused on President Harding, since it's the 100th anniversary of his election. And so we have a brand new Warren G. Harding collection online that we're adding more and more content to regularly, kind of documenting his campaign and the other materials we already had online. So we continually add content, and then our partners, we have about 40 active partners around the state who are also choosing from their own collections of materials to digitize. So Wood County up in Northwest Ohio has been celebrating their bicentennial, I believe, this year or around now. So they've been adding content. Mount St. Joseph University and the Sisters of Charity in the Cincinnati area have also been celebrating an anniversary within the last year or two. So they've been adding a lot of content documenting the history of their communities and their residents. And so it's just every month new things are added. And we get new partners every year, and it's really exciting to see it expand and let people have let people be able to choose what they want to represent their community. And we love being able to support that and give them an outlet to do that, since digitization isn't cheap and it isn't super easy. So we're trying to help lower those barriers as much as we can so that they can share their information and other people can get to it.
That's great. And a final question, many genealogists will be looking to kind of help supplement their own family stories. And I think that's where a website like yours comes in so handy, because it's going to have some of the greater, wider context. What are some of the parameters they should keep in mind around usage and copyright?
Oh, great question. So generally speaking, most of the materials on Ohio Memory are available for educational use without needing extra permission. So if you're a family historian and you are wanting to put a picture in a presentation for your family, you just want to keep it as part of your own research records, that's fine. There isn't any sort of monitoring for that. And if you want to post something on Facebook or another social media account, we just ask that you link back to us so people who look at it know where they can find whatever you found and also find out where they can get more, just like it if they're interested in it. But anything beyond that, like if you had a formal publication basically in kind of formal publication, you would need to reach out to us to go through our rights and reproduction system. And we do, there are things that are in public domain on Ohio Memory, but there are plenty of things that are not in public domain. It's really a mixed bag of material. So it all requires a little bit of digging into, but I would say in most cases for genealogists, there aren't a lot of barriers for them accessing the content and reusing it in a way that's standard for genealogists for kind of local presentations and sharing with family and that sort of thing.
Fantastic. Well, it's a wonderful resource. It's ohiomemory.org. And you've been hearing from Jenny Solomon, who is the Digital Services Manager. Thank you so much, Jenny. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you so much to Jenny Solomons for joining us here. What a terrific website. Just to recap, she mentioned that they have records pertaining to the Civil War, to World War I, maps, drawings, photographs, journals, oral histories, both audio and video oral histories, and tons of yearbooks. I went digging through the yearbooks and found all kinds of stuff. And of course, they have some present day records as well. Now, I want to also remind you about Jenny's search tip because I think it's really important. Remember, everything is digital and keyword searchable on their website. So you can use that search box on their homepage, and it's going to search both the text of the item itself, because they have OCR, and the metadata. But if you just want to see picture items, visual items, there's a little checkbox. It's called Exclude Full Text Sources. That's the box that you want to check when you put your keywords in the search field, and then you will only get items that you can look at, visual resources. So here's wishing you loads and loads of genealogy gems over at ohiomemory.org. Let's head over to chat and see how you're doing. I saw a question pop in asking about if they had German newspapers. Now, I know that Chronicling America does for Ohio. Certainly, there's a large German population in Ohio. I believe they do as well. I think it's so simple to go over there and search. Go check it out and try. If you know the title of a newspaper, then that would be even faster to go and search for that. And also, you might try searching in German. So you could go to Google Translate, put in a couple of keywords that you have a particular interest in, get those converted over into German, and then try them in the search engine over at ohiomemory.org. You never know what you'll find. Let's see what else is going on. I got to make my screen here a little bigger so I can see what you're saying. Okay. I saw lots of people talking about using the yearbooks, and those are fantastic. It reminded me a lot of looking through the Internet Archive in terms of the searchability and being able to view things and download things, and it was just fantastic images. Do they have anything on criminal records or prison records? Linda, I don't know about that. I didn't actually look for that. What I did notice was in the filters on the left-hand side, there's lots of different subject types. Even if you find that criminal records is one of them, look through all of them. What's interesting is it's human beings, right, that put items into digital collections. And sometimes they end up creating a new tag or a new subject that's just a little bit different than the other one. So don't assume whether it's criminal records or newspapers or yearbooks or whatever, that there aren't other tags and other subject headings that are really similar that fall in the same category that you're going to want to catch. Look all the way through that filtering system. And then, of course, if you've got some specific things in mind, whether it's people's names or a particular court case, you could search for that as well. So I would think particularly with criminal records, you're going to want to switch that up a little bit and try a couple of different variations on the search. All right. Well, we're going to get into our next record collection here, which I'm really looking forward to. Let's just dig right in. Well, FamilySearch is always busy with new and exciting records that they're bringing to genealogists, and the Freedmen's Bureau records are certainly in that category. So today I have invited the Deputy Chief Genealogical Officer of FamilySearch, Thom Reed, to join us and talk about the Freedmen Bureau records and the website and everything else that we need to know to make the most of these records. Welcome to the show, Thom.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. This is exciting.
Well, you're always a busy guy. I know when we see each other at conferences, you're always busy. You've been busy this week. You've been working with going to SLIG, the Salt Lake Institute of Genealogy, right?
Correct. I'm in the second week of SLIG this year, where we're doing in-depth African-American genealogy. So I've already seen in the first 2 days references to Freedmen Bureau records and how they've been so instrumental for helping people that I'm ready to talk.
Awesome. So they've been on your mind, definitely. And of
Absolutely.
course, you were really involved in that project, but I don't want to jump too far ahead. Let's bring everybody together and
Sure.
say, let's start at the beginning, which is good in case somebody hadn't heard of these records before.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us what the Freedmen's Bureau was.
So the Freedmen's Bureau was established shortly after the Civil War to help those newly freed enslaved individuals and poor white Southerners kind of get back on their feet or start anew, start afresh. And so in 15 states in the District of Columbia, the Department of the Army actually established these Freedmen Bureau field offices and local offices where if people needed assistance in any sort of way, they could come and seek help, right? And so many African Americans, who had been formerly, had been enslaved, now were on their own, and they needed, work, and they needed food, and they needed, housing and things like that. And so they came to the Bureau seeking support, and the government was there to kind of help them. And during the course of that help and administering that help, the government kept great records, and sometimes the first records of African Americans in this country. Because many had not been documented before. If they had been documented, it had been in wills and probates and estate files where it might have only been a first name or something like that as part of property, not as citizens of the United States. And so, it operated from 1865 to 1872, and kind of, went out of operation. It was hard to maintain, right, on that kind of a large scale. And so there's some other programs and things that happened after that. And hopefully, and in many instances, state governments took up, the responsibility and carried on the work of the Freedmen's Bureau. And so it was that kind of 7-year period where they were very much operating and helping people all across the South.
Wow. So certainly it's a wonderful resource for African American research. You also mentioned that there were some, I'm imagining, people who kind of lost everything in the war, or Southerns, Native Americans, maybe. We're going to find kind of a mix of people in their records.
You will find many. It was called the Bureau of Refugees, Freedmen, and Abandoned Lands.
Oh, okay.
That's the actual organization name. We've shortened it to Freedmen's Bureau. But that says a lot: refugees, freedmen, and abandoned lands. And so that tells you who they really tried to serve as anyone who had those needs. Who were refugees? Were they freedmen? Were they, did they have their lands confiscated and they needed to get their lands restored to them? And that maybe was some of the case with some of the white Southerners at the time as well. So you will find a variety of ethnicities. These are not African American only records, but you do see a lot of African Americans who are documented in these records, and that's why it's so helpful.
Absolutely. Well, and as we talk about here on the show a lot, that anytime our ancestors interact with the government, records get generated, and that's what you were talking about with these. And I think you mentioned, and I think this is really important for anybody doing research, is to realize this may be the first time we see first and last name for some of these freed people. Isn't that true?
Absolutely. There's one, a friend of mine reached out to me wanting help and was able to find her, formerly enslaved ancestor for the first time with his full name in a labor contract in Arkansas. And so that was, for her, that was like, wow, this name had carried through, to her family even till today. But to see where the origin of that name was, and then to find out that the origin of that surname actually comes from the person who enslaved her ancestor as well. But that name has carried through, and that she was able to find that name for the first time in the Freedmen Bureau records.
Would it be safe to say that these types of records, and we'll talk about some of the types of records that it generated, sure, but would these Freedmen Bureau records potentially help people kind of get past that wall we tend to hit in African American research?
Yeah, absolutely. The 1870 brick wall, as it's kind of known as, these form a bridge, if you will, and in many instances allow people to break through that brick wall. This is exactly the situation that I'm talking about, where Now you've identified someone in a Freedmen Bureau record who has a labor contract with a former, planter. And now you see this connection and this relationship that you had no idea about coming in 1870, because all you saw in 1870 is the household and the census, and you don't know the relationship between those people who lived near them from the census record alone. But now looking at the Freedmen Bureau record, you see these relationships that start to give you a sense of direction and give you some hypotheses and things to further your research, hopefully to get further, back and identifying those ancestors.
Oh, you can see why they're so important. Tell us, okay, so what kinds of records are we talking about? What were there a variety of different records, or was it like one, this is your document?
No, they did everything. So there's like I said, there's labor contracts, there's apprenticeship records, which was different than kind of a labor contract. They solemnized marriages. In many cases, it was illegal to marry. So now the Bureau officers are sitting with this couple saying, how long have you, been married, and how many children do you have, and documenting that. Their education records. So they started Freedmen schools, and they listed the children that attended those schools. There's hospital records. Many were getting health care for the first time. There are court documents. There's records of complaints, and grievances that happen in the area. There are ration records where, they appealed to the Bureau for food and things like that. So this really runs the gamut, like you said, in any way that they interacted with the government during this time. It was documented in these records. The majority, though, really was correspondence between the Bureau officers themselves and the state and federal offices. So there's a lot of communication and records where it's just transactional and talking about, like it may not be the records I'm talking about in the various types are all kind of the genealogical relevant, ones, but there's so many others that also have additional information on individuals in them, like a letter from a commissioner to another one saying, hey, we serve this family today. They're going to be moving. We want to make you aware. And so here's a letter from one, assistant commissioner to another assistant commissioner.
Well, that gets me thinking about now. I know you put that project together. Was it back in 2015, 2016, where you were getting these records digitized, making them available?
Right.
So I'm thinking about some of this correspondence, as you were going through that process, were you able to extract who they were talking about, or will people need to kind of dig in and just read it all for themselves and hope that they see something?
There's two sides to kind of this. You mentioned the Freedmen's Bureau project, which we kicked off in 2015 and finished in 366 days, actually. Wow. Where we kind of took from the records those genealogically relevant pieces and kind of put them in a project where people could index those digitized images and now make those searchable. And so that part of it made searchable 1,783,463 names, right? And so that's the searchable name part, but there's also pages and pages and pages of documentation that are still unindexed. Many people ask, did you do all the Freedmen Bureau records? No, we didn't do all of them because we didn't do a lot of that correspondence where there still is some genealogical nuggets and breakthroughs that can be had. And so you'll have to use, the finding aids and the descriptive guides and pamphlets and go through and kind of look at those images. All of those images are available online to view, but not all of them have been indexed. And so it will take some research help and really spending the time in these records to get the most out of both sides.
That's interesting. And I love that you mentioned finding aids, because I think those are so key. If we understand the collection, then we can better understand how to access it. So let's talk about access. I know FamilySearch .org was such a driving force in all of this. And you have is it discoverfreedmen.org?
Correct.
Should they start there, or should they just go straight to FamilySearch.org? Is there a difference?
It depends on what you want to do and what you know, right? And so for many people, just getting into the database and understanding what it has, going to discoverfreedmen.org and seeing if you have, for example, an ancestor that was in that was enumerated in the 1870 census, you may want to go to discoverfreedmen.org and see if there are Freedmen Bureau records for that ancestor. And that's a great way to start. The way it works on that website is actually you just put in a name, a first name and a last name, not even a location, and it will search all the indexed collections that we have available, including the Freedmen Bank records, which was a separate entity than the Freedmen's Bureau, and I can talk about that in a second. But it'll search all of those record collections together, and then it will let you know where that name appears and lets you kind of scour through that. And that's one kind of way to do it, and many people do that. We don't promote it very much anymore since the project's been over, but we still get lots of traffic, lots of people who are searching for their ancestors on discoverfreedmen.org. But then you can also, if you know the locale or if you know the specific type of record that you're looking for, you can go on FamilySearch.org. And just like you would, search our searchable record database and browse our published collections, you can get into individual collections there and start to do some research. And so that's usually if you have a lot more clues on who you're looking for and you're looking for a specific type of record, would be good to start at FamilySearch.org. But if you don't know, we always, say, go ahead, go to discoverfreedmen.org and put in the name and see what comes up.
And so searching there is really dedicated to just that collection. But like you said, Family Search would be for those who want to use more of the filters, more of the other search fields to kind of mix it up. Okay.
Absolutely.
Now, I heard you mention banking records. Is that right?
Yes.
Tell us what they are and how they differ.
So the Freedmen's Bank was a separate entity than the Bureau, based in Washington, D.C., and allowed, again, after the war, the Civil War, those Blacks who had money to actually deposit those funds into a bank account and actually start to establish and accumulate some kind of wealth. And it operated a little bit longer than the Bureau, from 1865 to 1874. It was not the same. It was the Freedmen's, Freedmen's Savings and Trust Bank, I believe is the official name of it. And there, the interesting thing about their depositor records is to be a depositor, you had to put information about your family, about where you lived. And so in this case, you have whole family groups that are listed on a depositor's application to get a bank account with the Freedmen's Bank. And so you have a husband and wife and all their children, where they lived. In some instances, it has who they were formerly enslaved by as well in those depositor records from the Freedmen's Bank. Unfortunately, due to mismanagement and some other financial issues, they closed and kind of crashed and went away. But those records remain. Again, the government, National Archives and Records Administration has been the ones who have held those records for years. And we actually indexed those back in 2001. So the Freedmen Bank record collection, which is over 400,000 names, 469,000 names, are in that specific collection database, have been available since 2001, available on FamilySearch.org. But we kind of bring all of those together on that Discover Freedmen, the Freedmen's Bureau, and the Freedmen's Bank. And so we search all of those records together.
Did you say those are index only? So where would people get access
Index
to?
And images.
And
images. And images.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
So,
well, it just, I know I got a big smile on my face when I heard you say, and they had to tell about the family, because that's
right.
what you want to hear when it comes to records like that.
Absolutely.
Wow. What a wealth of information, and how amazing that Family Search, and you partnered with a lot of different organizations, didn't you, to kind of bring that all together?
Yeah. National Archives obviously was the partner. They held the digitized images for us. And we also partnered with the National Museum of African American History and Culture. So at the time was opening in 2016. And we, as a gift to the museum, in working in collaboration with them, gave them the database from the Freedmen's Bureau project. And so now if you go to that museum in Washington, D.C., you can actually go search on they have a Center for Family History, the Robert Frederick Smith Explore Your Family History Center, on the second floor of the museum. And you can go there and you can search Family Search. You can search the database that we gave them. You can even search on Ancestry, again, one of our good partners and friends. and do some genealogy there and connect to these records there. We also partner with several societies, the largest being the Afro-American Historical and Genealogical Society, and several of their chapters at the time. I think there was 35 chapters across the United States, and their society members helped push a lot of those indexing projects along, and was just extremely helpful in doing that.
It's amazing what can get accomplished when you pull together, and how FamilySearch is able to pull together some wonderful volunteers to make, I mean, you did this in record time. It's really something.
We had 25,550 volunteers that helped us with this project. And like I said, done in 366 days. I say 366 because we were trying to get it done in a year. And I remember that June 19th of 2016 was a Sunday. And so I didn't get the report for the completion of the project because we weren't in the office until Monday morning. And so I couldn't say that we finished it on Sunday because I didn't have a definitive record that showed it. So 366 days, 1,781,463 names from that project with those 25,550 volunteers. And I think I can't thank enough people, right? Because there were so many who were involved who have made this possible. FamilySearch may be, have been the facilitator and tried to organize this, but really without the help of volunteers and your listeners and viewers and folks who really are dedicated to this, we wouldn't have this treasure trove of records that we have today. So thank you very much to anyone who's listening or watching this.
I'm sure there are many who probably participated, and wow, what a treasure trove. Thank you so much for coming here today and sharing with us about these amazing records. I know everybody will be interested to take another look for themselves at discoverfreedmen.org or FamilySearch.org. Thom, it's always great to hear from you and see you. Thank you so much.
Good to see you too. Thank you for having me. And I hope this again helps individuals break through that brick wall and discover and connect with their families.
I'm sure it will. Thank you so much to Thom Reed. Now, he mentioned a couple of important websites: Discovering Your African American Heritage, and most importantly, FamilySearch's Freedmen's Bureau project website. That's at discoverfreedmen.org. It's kind of a great portal to all the records over at FamilySearch, but of course, FamilySearch is a great place to go as well, FamilySearch.org. Everything there is absolutely free. And this show is free, and I will have detailed show notes for you over at genealogygems.com. Just click Elevenses in the menu over there, and you will get the detailed notes. Those will be coming out in just a day or so after this video is complete, our live show here. But of course, check down in the video description as well for this video to get all the details on how to get connected with us. And if you haven't already signed up for the free newsletter, please do that, because that's the best way by far to stay connected with me so that I can let you know about the new shows that are coming out, both the podcasts and the videos. And I don't know what happened there. I had an Elevenses with Lisa just flying across the screen on his face. Thom is such a good guy. He'll understand. A little video editing glitch there. Speaking of video editing, I thought I would share with you just a little project I was working on. So yesterday was St. Patrick's Day here, and I was looking through my photographs, of course, of my Irish ancestors, which if you have been a Elevenses with Lisa viewer, then you know I've been working diligently on my Irish brick wall. We made some huge progress in episode 18 of Elevenses with Lisa. And anyway, my ancestor who kind of made the journey, my great-great-grandmother, was Margaret Scully, and she married Michael Lynch. And so I found this old photograph of her back in the 1920s. Now, Margaret was born in the 1840s. She immigrated in the 1850s. And I just wanted to see what I could do using kind of a collection of tools in my toolkit for photo editing and video editing. And here's what I came up with. It's amazing I get anything done. I love playing with old photographs. It was so much fun. So, okay, so what that was I have discovered that when you're using that MyHeritage, the colorization and the enhancer and all that, if you bring the photo in already somewhat restored, it makes a huge difference, particularly if you're one of the 50 million people who have been, or I don't know how many, they've had 50 million uploads of that deep nostalgia, the animation. It's not near as good if you haven't done a little bit of the restoration. We get those kind of mold spots, those dark spots are like mold on the photographs, tears, all kinds of things that are wrong with the original image, and those all go into the animation. So I just used my phone and the free Adobe Fix. It's Adobe Photoshop Fix app, and that's a free app, and you can bring the photo onto your phone and do some restoration. You want a really high resolution image so that you can really zoom in and get in there and fix things. But I found that fixing the kind of the tears in the image, some of the spots and the markings, things that just kind of mess things up, getting that done first and then taking it in, even then, MyHeritage's an enhancer enhanced it even further. And then we did decolorization, and then we did the animation. And with all of that, I used a program called Camtasia, and I'm going to have a link to that in the show notes, to kind of transpose, is that what I'm going to call it? To lay the photograph that was done on top of the animation so it kind of came to life and kind of zoomed in and zoomed out. So lots of different tools, but it was fun to see how they could all work together. And I love that we're all here together every week. I know that with some of the video interviews, I'm at the mercy of Zoom. And so it's only as good as the camera that we're working with, but then Zoom's translation of the camera, and then the video rendering, and then putting it out over live stream. So I'm working on that to see if I can find other alternatives to get a sharper picture that maybe can get around Zoom and do something else. So we'll be working on that. But as always, I hope that you picked up something new today, something that you're excited about going and trying, a genealogy gem, because that's what we're all about here. Visit me at genealogygems.com/Elevenses. We'll get you straight to the show notes. And of course, many of you are premium members. I hope you're a premium member. Be sure and head to the resources section of the show notes page to download your ad-free PDF cheat sheet of everything that both of my guests talked about today, including also some of the techniques I used on the video editing. So that's available for you in the resources. You can learn more about premium membership at genealogygems.com as well. And these videos are here free at our YouTube channel. I sure hope you'll subscribe. And over a period of time, they kind of pile up. And so we move some of those and archive them exclusively for premium members. Well, have a wonderful week. Stay safe. We just had a huge storm here in Texas, but I see the sun is shining, so there's some gardening to do and some genealogy to do. Have a wonderful week. I'll talk to you next week. Bye-bye.